Dick Durbin is the second highest ranking Democrat in the Senate, and he has a message for all of us progressives in 2020. If we become too liberal, if the party moves too far to the left, then that might hand Donald Trump another victory in 2020. So in other words, he's encouraging the Democratic Party to double down on the same strategy that was conducive to a Donald Trump victory in the first place. They are incapable of learning their lesson, but let's hear him out. So according to Andrew Kaczynski of CNN, he reports that the Illinois senator was asked on a local Chicago radio program about comments made by Democratic Representative Cheri Bustos, which the host characterized as a warning to fellow Democrats that if the party becomes too liberal, they would give Trump another term. We need to be balanced, Durbin said on Connected to Chicago on WLSAM on Sunday. She's right about that. And as a downstater like her, I understand she represents a challenging district. We don't give up on our values, but we better be sensitive, too, that there are people with more moderate views and people who may disagree with some parts of the Democratic platform as they are presented. We've got to be open to that possibility. So you could lose it by being too liberal, asked the host. You can, Durbin said. I think you can overdo it. We have to really appeal to that sensible center. It's a thin stripe now. It used to be a lot wider stripe, but it's an important and determining factor in most elections. Now again, this is the same strategy that Hillary Clinton employed in 2016. Even though, yes, it is the case that technically Bernie Sanders influenced her platform in a way and she paid lip service to progressives, she still ran to the right in the general election. She chose a running mate who was to the right of her. So Hillary Clinton, what she did was she tried to appeal to moderates, and that didn't work out for her. And see, the problem is that Dick Durbin conceptualizes the 2016 election in a way in which Hillary Clinton was too liberal to appeal to moderate voters, but in actuality, Hillary Clinton was too conservative to appeal to left-wing voters, and this demoralized her own base, who opted to stay home overall. So the problem is that Democrats always assume that you have your core base no matter what, but in moving to the right to compete with the Republican Party's insanity, they've abandoned a lot of core voters because they've just become too conservative for progressives to support anymore. They don't appeal to left-wingers. So in abandoning the left-wingers, they're unable to make up the voters they're losing by courting moderate voters, or so-called moderate voters. At this point, they're just right-wingers. Because we're polarized. This middle to center ground, with the way that the Overton window has shifted so far to the right in this country, there are no moderates anymore. When you appeal to so-called moderates, you're just appealing to right-wingers at this point. And right-wingers don't like you. This is why Democrats have been wiped out at all levels of government across the country. You have to make sure that you acknowledge that you're not going to appeal to moderates, but you need to court one group of voters you abandoned, left-wingers, progressives. So in saying that Democrats can lose in 2020 by becoming too liberal, that's the opposite. If you don't move back to the left and reclaim the voters you lost, then yes, you will hand Donald Trump another victory. And to me, that sounds unfathomable at this point because he's so unpopular. His approval rating is down in literally every single state in the country. So for him to win in 2020, that's almost unthinkable to me at this point. But it is something that is a possibility if Democrats don't get their act together, which is why we have to keep the pressure on the party. We are making progress. When you look at issues like Medicare for All, we are successfully dragging them in the right direction. Now, a lot of them are still unwilling to budge, and that's fine. We're working on them. But the Democratic Party has got to realize that it has a problem in the first place in order to correct that problem. And the problem here is that they need to move back to the left and reclaim the voters they lost, because you're not making up enough voters on the right to account for that deficit on the left. They need to acknowledge this, but they won't acknowledge this because people like Dick Durbin, if you look at his staff and all the Democratic Party strategists that are in his ear getting paid millions of dollars to feed him this bad advice, they are constantly telling him that you can't move to the left. You have to be a centrist Republican light in these relatively conservative red and purple states, when that's not true. Again, I've said this once, I'll say it again. In these really conservative states, voters who are left-leaning and who might actually vote Democrat, they're not going to waste their time trying to register with all of these Republican voter ID laws in gerrymandered districts to support a Democrat who will only screw them over a little bit less than Republicans. You've got to give voters something to vote for. You can't just keep betting that they're going to come out to vote against Republicans. You've got to offer a true message. And right now, when you look at public opinion polls, the momentum is on our side. Medicare for all, tuition-free public colleges and universities, on free trade. The American people are on the side of progressives. So read a poll for once and realize that you have the wrong strategy. And this should be really apparent by now because you keep losing. But I mean, some Democrats like Dick Durbin will never learn their lesson. And the fact that he is the second highest ranking Democrat in the Senate, that's really scary to me. Because if you are in a leadership position or maybe in a leadership position, in the coming years, then you need to be hypersensitive to what voters want, and particularly what your own base wants. But Dick Durbin is not that.
Support this podcast by becoming a patron at patreon.com/Humanist Report.